Hey everyone, welcome. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here for this explainer. If you're really focused on understanding how wealth is actually built and structured in real estate, well, you are in exactly the right place today. We're going to be unpacking this really fascinating document from Nationwide Real Estate Acquisitions LLC. We'll explore the systemic barriers of traditional renting, and much more importantly, a real, tangible alternative pathway to ownership called seller financing. We'll uncover how this model literally aims to turn your monthly expenses into long-term assets.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our mental map for today. We're going to cover 1. The renting wealth trap. 2. Traditional banking barriers. 3. Defining seller financing. 4. The real cost over time. 5. 3 steps to ownership. And finally 6. Building generational wealth. All right, let's jump right in.
Starting off with Section 1, the renting wealth trap, a flawed wealth model. I want to pose a really direct question to you right off the bat. Are you making your landlord rich? It's kind of a provocative thought, isn't it? It really hits on that common, everyday frustration so many of us feel when we write that rent check month after month, year after year, and boom, absolutely nothing tangible to show for it when the lease is up.
The realities of this rent trap are, honestly, pretty harsh. Every single dollar you pay in rent, it essentially vanishes from your own net worth forever. Poof, gone. Instead of building up your own future, you're actively building your landlord's equity. And on top of that, as a renter, you're subject to arbitrary rent increases, sudden rule changes, all while totally missing out on those massive tax deductions that homeowners get to enjoy. Look, whether it's long-term or short-term, the bottom line is exactly the same. Renting means very low financial benefit for you and zero equity.
Moving on to Section 2, traditional banking barriers, systemic roadblocks. And this beautifully illustrates a really tough reality. The data shows us a persistent racial homeownership gap, with Black Americans facing the lowest rates compared to other groups, while non-Hispanic white populations have the highest. Now, crucially, this gap persists not because of a lack of personal responsibility or desire, absolutely not, but due to long-standing structural banking barriers built into the system. So what exactly are these structural barriers? Well, traditional banking systems rely heavily on incredibly strict credit score requirements and these lengthy, drawn-out 40 to 60-day approval processes that, honestly, tend to favor people who are already wealthy. These systems frequently ignore years, sometimes decades of consistent, on-time rental payment history. It means that hardworking people who have proven every single month that they can make their housing payments are just completely excluded. Why? Simply because their real-life financial picture doesn't fit neatly into a rigid 3-digit credit score model.
Which brings us to Section 3, defining seller financing, the proposed solution.
Let's just demystify this term in plain, everyday language. Seller financing is exactly what it sounds like. The property owner essentially acts as the bank. They hold the mortgage note, and you make your monthly payments directly to them, or maybe to a third-party servicer. You completely bypass the traditional lending system, the whole shebang. And here is a vitally important distinction to understand. This is absolutely not a rent-to-own situation. With seller financing, you are the actual legal property owner from day one. You are immediately building equity with every single payment you make. Now, you might be wondering, okay, but what kind of homes does this actually apply to? Well, interestingly enough, this financing model isn't restricted to just one specific tier of housing. Nationwide Real Estate Acquisitions LLC offers a massive range of properties. We're talking single-family homes with nice yards, townhouses, even investment properties. In fact, they have homes available nationwide ranging anywhere from $60,000 all the way up to $5 million. Let's look at Section 4, the real cost over time, renting versus owning. Now, what's really interesting about this is the undeniable math. Let's base this on a $1,500 monthly payment over a decade. If you rent for 10 years, you are going to pay $180,000 total, and you will have exactly $0 in equity. No asset, no inheritance, nothing. But if you own through seller financing, with that exact same monthly output, you build over $100,000 in equity. Plus, you gain thousands in tax benefits. So at the end of those 10 years, instead of having a stack of old rent receipts, you actually have a home. So the crucial point here is accessibility. How do you actually get your foot in the door? Well, the required down payment is just 10 to 12% of the home's value. Think about it for a second. Many renters already pay their landlord the first month's rent, the last month's rent, and a hefty security deposit just to get the keys. That exact same pool of money could effectively serve as your down payment on a home you actually own. It's a real game changer.
Moving right along to Section 5, 3 Steps to Ownership, Streamlined Process. The whole process is surprisingly streamlined into 3 very simple steps. First up, you make that 10 to 12% down payment, which, remember, builds your equity right away. Second, you get your keys and you move into the home. And third, you sign a legally recognized agreement. Because they evaluate your current ability to pay and your overall stability, things like consistent income, rather than fixating on past credit mistakes, the approval process is entirely different and much more forgiving than a traditional bank.
And just to highlight the safety and speed of this whole process, seller financing is perfectly legal and fully recognized. All transactions are securely processed by licensed escrow companies, title companies, or attorneys, ensuring your full protection every step of the way. Furthermore, because you're totally skipping that exhausting 60-day bank approval maze, most buyers actually close and get those keys in their hands in just 2 to 3 weeks.
Finally, we reach Section 6, Building Generational Wealth, Breaking the Cycle.
You know, behind all these numbers and percentages are real families. Take Marcus J. from Detroit, for example. He says, I own a beautiful home with a mortgage payment of $1,150, less than my $1,200 rent for a small apartment. I'm an owner, not a renter. This is generational wealth for my family. I mean, wow. This beautifully proves that creating a tangible asset truly breaks the cycle of renting, and it actively helps close that wealth gap we discussed earlier.
And the organization standing behind this, Nationwide Real Estate Acquisitions, LLC, operates across all 50 states and has already helped over 1,000 families achieve their homeownership dreams. They really pride themselves on a 5-star customer satisfaction rating, a highly transparent process with absolutely no hidden fees, and a fundamental dedication to closing the homeownership gap for hardworking, credit-worthy renters.
We've covered a lot today: the systemic traps of renting, the arbitrary barriers set up by traditional banks, and the incredibly clear math behind seller financing as a viable, real-world alternative. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Will you break the generational cycle of renting and start a completely new legacy of ownership today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.